All praises unto the Most High. We are giving thanks unto thee, Father, for thou art merciful and kind to thy servant and to thy people, which is the house of Israel. All praises unto thee, and double honors unto our King and our Savior, Christ, who laid down his life for his people. Israel, I'm here again with another lesson, and today's a special day, as you know, because it is the starting of well, it's not as yet, but segue into the Sabbath. So it's the starting of the Sabbath. So sundown, we will be is the starting of the Sabbath. So we'll be giving thanks and praise unto the Most High for the Sabbath, right? So Israel, I did a lesson earlier, on Wednesday, which was dealing with, you know, I would say, a lot of fruits in the basket. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, these fruits are not very edible. They are more rotten fruits, right? And dealing with bankers and dealing with, people that are in high places that, commit, you know, wickedness on the masses, spiritually, physically, and mentally, right? So, if you haven't seen the previous video, go and check it out. Strong delusions, right? So this is segueing because on Wednesday I told you I will be bringing forth this part, which is dealing with taxes, right? And believe it or not, um, this is going to go deep as well and give you, great insight into, what you might have not known about taxes. And no, not just in, per se, America, because, you know, I make it straight. I do not live in America, but you must understand that, I didn't make it. They made it that they are the greatest nation on the earth. And by so, you know, whether you want to believe it or not, America is that country that basically, if they catch a cold, right, we all do catch the symptoms in the rest of the world. So basically, they set the foundation, and the Bible speaks of it. Spiritual Egypt. All right. No, with that said, it goes broad brush all over the world. So from something is really implemented, you could say in American laws to an extent, right, that it goes basically broad brushing all over the world. Dealing with our current situation that we have even right now, right? Okay, so right, I'm going to touch scriptures today, right, dealing with these what I call, people under the table, you know, that they pretend to be of a certain stature, but inwardly they're, ravenous wolves, right? And they are here to basically, put in their own agendas, which are very evil and wicked, right? And just to satisfy their own personal needs and lusts, right? Really lust, really. And it comes down to power and control, right? And we are, breaking these walls down by taking out brick by brick in the name of our Savior, Yeshua Christ, right? And we must do these work as, you know, in terms of people knowing the truth, because the truth will set you free, and also being in right, upright and righteous manner, because I don't see why that everyone can't, be living within a certain peaceful order and living in the laws and statutes of the Most High, right? It's not grievous, but as you know, the enemy is there. and he's jealous, right? And basically came to just, kill and destroy, right? In any means and fashion without no regard nor mercy, right? Now we're going to touch on these guys, which these guys are, some of your elite bankers, businessmen, and men in, politics, because it's not politics, it's politics, right? And we are, getting to the truth, right? And we will get to the truth one way or the other, right? So with that said, Israel, let's get into it. So I have two videos here. So I'm going to show you a quick news feed right here of some of the richest men in the world, and then going in more into the whole system of tax because it goes worldwide, right? Okay, so let's get into it.
Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, Michael Bloomberg, Elon Musk. These men are among the richest in the world. But do you know how much money they pay as income tax? 15%, 20, 30 maybe. The middle class may be used to hearing those figures, but not America's rich. They pay less than 4% of their income as tax. Some even pay less than 1%. Our next report tells you how America's richest men are able to avoid the bulk of their taxes.
It's no secret that the wealth of America is concentrated in the hands of a select few. As of 2020, 50 richest Americans held as much wealth as half of the entire United States. But among this elite group, the richest of the rich go to great lengths to pay less tax. A new report has uncovered how America's wealthiest avoid the income tax. These reporters studied the returns of the super rich. Here is what they found. Between 2014 and 2018, Warren Buffett's wealth grew by more than $24 billion. He reported an income of $125 million and paid just a little over $23 million as tax. When compared against his entire wealth, Buffett paid just 0.1% as income tax. There are more who are following Buffett's footsteps. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, paid just 0.98% as income tax. Michael Bloomberg, 1.30%. And Elon Musk, 3.27%. America's super rich are getting away by paying the bare minimum. Going by the laws, the wealthiest Americans must pay a 37% income tax on their earnings. But from 2014 to 2018, America's top 25 earners paid an income tax of less than 16%, or $13.6 billion. So how do the rich avoid income tax? The United States taxes people on their income and not the wealth they build over time. So money that remains locked in shares, vacation homes, yachts and other investments are not taxable. Plus, the rich exploit loopholes within the tax code that can limit or erase all tax liability. The new disclosures might force Joe Biden's hand. The US president has already proposed raising the income tax rate to almost 40%. But Biden has faced demands to consider a wealth tax on the super rich instead. Lawmakers like Elizabeth Warren have pushed the idea of a 2% tax. This is for all citizens who have a net worth that's above $50 million. This would include all stock holdings, houses, boats, and everything they own minus the debts. Reports say Biden has been warming up to the idea. Will he strike the super rich with a tax axe? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Right. So there we go, Israel, right? That, these guys pay less taxes than the middle class. And these guys are your poor people. I mean, forget about middle class, people in general, right? these guys pay less taxes and they're the richest. Now that's an oxymoron, right? Because how is it that you have more and you're paying less? And I that have less is paying more. That is crazy. That is slavery, but in a reverse context, not having you chained and whipped, but mentally slavery. Even, Robert Nesta Marley talked about that. You have to free yourself from mental slavery, right? So these are the constructs and all the things that they use and loopholes to keep themselves very wealthy because they know the laws, they know they're the ones that are more close with all these lawmakers. They are very, in touch with the people that, deal with all these taxation, like the IRS and all these other companies that deals with, income tax, right? Now, they're saying that Joe Biden will also now try to change that. But, never you put your trust in princes of these worlds. So if you're looking for that, you are in a long, long line to wait, right? So now let's get into the meat of the matter now, Israel, all right? Because it's really about, deception and fooling the masses to let people think that they are about, democracy and they're about, having, you know, great prosperity within the nation. But that is far from it because as you know, we're in the last days now, no doubt about it, right? And as the father said, there's more things needed. Well, all things has to come to pass for certain things for the Father to be here to give these wicked men of an account for all their wicked deeds. Remember, all these things will not go unpunished, right? So now, Israel, let's get into it.
The year was 1913. Woodrow Wilson was president, and powerful banking interests, who had been trying for years, finally achieved their long-term goal of a silent coup d'etat by taking control of the American government. The first thing they did to accomplish that takeover was convince Secretary of State Philander Knox to lie to the American people and tell them that the 16th Amendment, the Income Tax Amendment, had been legally ratified by the states when it was not. The bankers knew that this tax would ultimately end up in their pockets. Because of this fraud, the American people were led to believe there was now a tax on their labor. Congress and the president are completely aware of this fraud, and it was even cited in a recent court case. That very same year, the bankers committed their second and by far the most diabolical fraud ever perpetrated on the American people by bribing senators to pass the Federal Reserve Act without the required constitutional amendment.
All in favor, say aye.
They did this during Christmas vacation, when many senators were home celebrating the holidays with their families. And that's how the unconstitutional Federal Reserve Act came into being. They were very clever, and they understood that whoever issued the money for America would control the government. The bankers won, and the American people lost, because most politicians will sell their soul for $1. And now the Federal Reserve could issue dollars legally. As Mayor Rothschild said, "Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws." He knew that he and the other bankers would now control the laws of the nation. Government gave these bankers one of its most important powers, and now had to borrow money from them and pay interest to finance the government. So the American people were forced to lower their standard of living and pay a graduated income tax to the government, just so the government could give these bankers more profits. President Woodrow Wilson, who signed the Federal Reserve Act into law, later said, in regret, "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is now controlled by its system of credit. We are no longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men."
The Federal Reserve was created by Congress in 1913, and it was entrusted with the power granted originally to the Congress by the U.S. Constitution to coin money and regulate the value thereof.
What's your name?
Jan Crafting?
Hi, Jen. I'm Aaron Russo. I produced the movie
Is this a joke? Am I gonna
No, it's not a joke.
Okay, good.
No. I produced the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and The Rose with Bette Midler, many movies. I'm doing a feature film. And my film is about my quest to find out whether or not people pay income taxes. Do you pay an income tax?
Yes, I do.
You do?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a law that requires you to pay an income tax?
Have I ever read it? Do you mean in the page, black and white? No, no.
So you pay the income tax, I assume?
Of late. Well, actually, no, I didn't file last year, but,
Okay.
I'm sorry, is this on film? No, I paid my tax.
My question to you is, have you ever seen a law that says you have to pay an income tax?
The law is that guy that wears that badge and a gun. That's the one that puts you in jail. That's the law.
Actually, I can't stand the IRS.
Okay. They're evil. Do you have any fear of the IRS?
Not really, because I'm Canadian.
I think it's actually unconstitutional, is what I've heard. But to avoid any hassle, I pay it.
If there was no law and I wasn't afraid of them coming and taking me to jail, absolutely, I wouldn't pay taxes.
Okay, then no, I wouldn't pay income taxes.
It's a no-brainer. You wouldn't pay it.
I wouldn't pay it.
Why would anybody?
Because that's what they tell us we must do, else we're bad Americans.
Would you pay it?
No.
Would you pay it?
No.
Why would you pay taxes if you don't have to?
What if I told you that all your money that the income tax that's paid into the income tax just goes to pay the interest on the national debt?
That's incredible. That's truly incredible. I thought it was for infrastructure and all the other stuff.
The income tax is not legal because it would be a direct tax and it is not apportioned as the Constitution demands.
If it's against the Constitution, then why are we doing it?
Now, Israel, no, this is all the things that they tax, and this is like worldwide. You know, I mean, you can't get away from this, right? All the things that you on a daily basis that you live within this society or any society, you are going to get these taxes. So let's continue.
I really expected that, of course, there's a law that you can point to in the law book, the code that requires you to file a tax return. Of course there is. Maybe I don't know what it is right then as he was speaking to me, but sure. So naively, I agreed to go off and research it and get back to him. 3.5 months later, I was at that point where I couldn't find the statute that clearly made a person liable, at least not me and most people I know. And I had no choice in my mind except to resign.
I had to leave the IRS because I presented evidence that I had accumulated indicating that the agency was violating the law and violating people's rights. And I asked the agency for a response to my sincere concerns. And the answer I got was that they would not respond to my concerns and that they would provide me with the paperwork necessary to tender my resignation.
But We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education put a full-page ad in the USA Today on July 7th, 2000. And within the body of that ad was a $50,000 challenge for anyone that could show the law. And to me, $50,000 is a lot of money. So I went after that and did the research based on the fact that I thought, let's put this baby to bed. I'm hearing all these rumors. I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I'll answer these people's questions that are asking me, and then I'll win this $50,000. And, based on the research that I did throughout the year 2000 and that I'm still doing, I have not found that law. I've asked Congress. We've asked a lot of people in the IRS commissioners, helpers. They can't answer, because if they answer, the American people are going to know that this whole thing is a fraud.
I was surprised to hear these highly trained and decorated IRS agents telling me there was no law requiring American citizens to file a 1040 or to pay an income tax on their labor.
I haven't filed an federal income tax return since I left.
I have not filed a tax return since 1999. Approximately 67 million people don't file an income tax return.
I made a decision to go to Washington so I could attend the We the People Foundation press conference. They were going to serve a class action lawsuit on the IRS, signed by over 3,000 people, because the IRS has refused to show the law that makes Americans liable to file a 1040 or to pay an income tax on their labor. I was very curious as to why the IRS refused to show the law, as it seemed such a simple thing to do. Yet I was skeptical about the foundation's claims. There had to be a law, right? We've all been told over and over and over again that we had to pay income taxes.
No answers, no taxes. No answers, no taxes. No answers, no taxes.
Most people believe that the income tax system is legal and that the revenue from the tax is used in the public interest. However, there is a substantial, conclusive body of evidence that proves that our income tax system represents the most pernicious form of tyranny. It is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated by government against the working men and women of America.
American citizens, along with the foundation, have been asking the IRS to specifically provide them with the underlying legal foundation upon which they administer and enforce the personal income tax laws in our country.
At the national level, when people would attempt to contact somebody of a much higher authority, say the commissioner. Same kind of thing. They would get answers that were in effect non-answers.
There are a group of people standing outside today who assert that no law requires you to pay taxes and that you will not answer their petition to the government as to whether they're required to pay taxes. Are they required to pay taxes?
I've been paying my taxes ever since I had my first job, and I think it's a fundamental construct of our nation that those of us who expect and demand the services from our government that the government provides, be they the protection of our country through the military, or be they the education of our children, or be they the protection of our environment, that we must pay for those services. So yes, I think there is a fundamental obligation, and that it's an understood and well accepted one.
Joe Bannister and I had a meeting in the White House with President Clinton's economic advisor, Jason Furman. He accepted the remonstrance for the president. On June 2nd, I called and spoke with him. His words were, "We have decided that the issue of the legality of the income tax is not a high priority matter for the White House, and we will not be participating in any conference on the subject." I decided not to eat until my death, or until the government agreed to send their experts to meet with the experts from the tax honesty movement. And with the help of Congressman Bartlett, a deal was made.
I'm very pleased that through these several trying weeks and now months, that we have secured the agreement of the IRS and the Justice Department, because some of the questions are beyond the purview of IRS, that they will both attend a public symposium where these issues can be formally addressed.
Last Thanksgiving, DOJ and IRS notified Congressman Bartlett that they would not participate. Congressman Bartlett then waited until late January. He informed me that he would not be participating.
Why do you think you've been able to get away with not paying or filing your income taxes for so long?
Well, first of all, I've not gotten away with anything. I'm not hiding from anyone. I'm simply asking the IRS to show me the laws that apparently require me to do these things, and they are suspiciously reticent to answer questions from me. And of course, there are millions of other people, many other organizations who have attempted to get answers. They act very suspiciously when asked to simply sit down at the table with the American people and discuss what their obligations are. Rather than pulling up a chair, they pull out a club.
As a matter of fact, David K. Johnston of the New York Times asked Terry Lemons of the IRS, why won't the IRS answer the questions set forth in the petitions from the American people? Mr. Lemons' response was, the government is answering the questions through enforcement actions in the courts. This is a very chilling remark on the government's use of brute force instead of civility and logic.
The federal government itself refuses to provide the American people who are coercively being subjected to this extraction of their private property without any underlying legal justification. There is no law that requires the average American worker in the private sector to pay a direct unapportioned tax on their labor and compensation for services. There is no law.
The march will stop in front of the IRS building.
They are now going to serve a class action lawsuit on the IRS. Very courageous.
My name is Charles Bell, and I'm here to serve this complaint on behalf of the American people to the Internal Revenue Service. The complaint is accompanied by an affidavit that's under the hand of Robert Schultz.
case was served, we'll call you with the case number. Case has been filed. We'll call you with the case number. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate your time.
America, baby! Freedom!
Today, effectively, the people have said to their servant government that that our rights are not going to be any longer denied, and that we're going to have answers to our petition, our legitimate, lawful petitions for redress of grievances, which are guaranteed in the First Amendment to our Constitution. So once and for all, we will get an answer.
On August 31st, 2005, federal judge Emmett Sullivan ruled, the government does not have to answer the American people's questions, even though it is guaranteed in the First Amendment. Our courts have made a decision that government does not have to show the law that it enforces. And the press never reported on this. Have we given this judge the authority to overrule the Constitution, the very foundation of American life?
I believe that in both spirit and substance, our tax system has come to be un-American. Death and taxes may be inevitable, but unjust taxes are not.
The country's taxes must be fixed, and I know what to do with it. If you think you're paying too much now, just wait till I get through with it.
Now, Mr. Hanley, I'd like to ask you something. What does the government do with all the money we give them in taxes?
When President Reagan was elected, one of the first things that he did was appoint a blue ribbon panel of business people headed by Peter Grace, and is commonly referred to as the Grace Commission. And their job was to research all the various areas of the federal government and make a report. One of the quotes from the Grace Commission is, 100% of what is collected is absorbed solely by interest on the federal debt. All individual income tax revenues are gone before one nickel is spent on the services taxpayers expect from government.
If we pay the salaries of the congressmen and the senators, we're supporting them, aren't we?
Well, yes.
Yeah. Well, then why can't we list them as dependents and deduct them?
We've been brainwashed. People have been told, that you need this income tax system to fund government, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, my question is, well, if that's true, how did we fund government from 1776 to 1913?
The main purpose of the income tax is not to raise revenue, but to redistribute wealth and to control society.
A lot of people might say, well, gee, if there wasn't an income tax, what would happen to education? They don't understand that education is paid for the most part, out of state and local taxes, your property tax. People might say, well, how are we going to build and maintain our highways if there's no money coming into the government? We need our highways. There is a tax on every gallon of gasoline that people buy. Proceeds from the income tax do not pay for highway construction. The amount of money that we spend on defense is exactly equal to the amount of corporate income tax, which is quite legal and quite constitutional.
I think we should not want the income tax for several reasons. One is that it is the instrument of totalitarianism. It is the means by which the government can manipulate people and put you into a condition of servitude.
Every year, you give the federal government a form that says, here's how all my money worked. If you lie, you could go to prison. So you're required to give them a financial statement that under, the force of law could put you in prison if it's not impeccable, right? And under the law, they're supposed to do the same. They're supposed to give you back a financial statement that says, here's what we did with your money, except you comply and they don't. In fiscal 99, the Department of Defense had 1.1 trillion of undocumentable adjustments. The following year, they had 2.3 trillion of undocumentable adjustments.
I decided to call the IRS. I spoke to Anthony Burke in Media Relations. He was very nice to me, and I explained to him that I was an award-winning film producer and that I was doing a documentary on the IRS. He seemed a bit stunned by this, then explained to me that Commissioner Everson nor anybody else would go on film to discuss the income tax. But he did say he would call me back. I thanked him for that, but I couldn't help wondering, Why was the government making it so difficult for people to see the law? So I decided to bring my crew down to the IRS building to see if I could find some employees to interview. And here's what happened.
I said you cannot film here, that's it. Who are you to tell me I can't film here? What's the law? Just tell me where the law is that says that. Can you show me the law that says I can't film here? Is America a free country? I told him they couldn't film here, and he's asking 9 million questions. I told him that's a federal government law. Hey. I told him he couldn't film here. He's telling me he's a citizen and all that. So I couldn't film him. I'm saying, where's the law that says I can't film here? And I'm asking another question, sir.
Then Homeland Security showed up because I was such a threat to Washington.
You got a driver's license up? Yeah, I do. Put that away for me.
After convincing Homeland Security I really wasn't Osama bin Laden, I kept wishing the IRS would allow me to interview somebody. Why wouldn't they show the law? What were they so nervous about? I began to have a frightening thought. What if it was our own government we had to be afraid of? With that disturbing thought in my mind, I went to see a group of tax experts.
You can look through the statutes and look for the law that requires you to pay. And when you do that, you can't identify a law that requires the average person in America who earns a wage and works in private business to pay an income tax.
The Constitution allows for two kinds of taxes. They're called direct and indirect.
The federal government in the Constitution can tax almost anything, as long as it apportions the tax if it's direct.
The indirect tax is, for example, an excise tax. I can avoid the excise tax on gasoline. I can choose to ride my bicycle. I can avoid the excise tax on tobacco. I can choose not to smoke, or I can grow my own tobacco.
The income tax which is being applied now doesn't meet the criteria of either direct or indirect taxes.
The IRS claims that in 1913, the 16th Amendment, the Income Tax Amendment, allowed the government a third form of taxation. What was the Supreme Court's ruling on that?
The Supreme Court in the case of Stanton versus Baltic Mining. I mean, what could be clearer than this? The provisions of the 16th Amendment conferred no new power of taxation.
The Ruschauer case also said that the 16th Amendment did not impose any new taxes and did not change any of the taxing restrictions of the Constitution.
There were also several other major Supreme Court cases in that same period from 1916 up until about 1923.
Stratton Independence versus Hobart, Southern Pacific versus Lowe, Bowers versus Curbo Empire, Burnett versus Harmel, Doyle versus Mitchell.
It's actually very simple. Congress tried to enact an income tax in 1894. The Supreme Court said that's unconstitutional. When the Supreme Court says something is unconstitutional, it's unconstitutional. They tried again in 1913, and the Supreme Court said the 16th Amendment conferred no new power of taxation. So if they didn't have it then, and they didn't get it, they don't have it. There is no constitutional basis for a tax on the wages of Americans living and working in the 50 states of the Union. Period. End of argument.
I have a letter here from Daniel Inouye's office of the United States Senate that says, based on the research performed by the Congressional Research Service, there is no provisions which specifically and unequivocally require an individual to pay an income tax. Period. End of story. There is no law, and to date, nobody has been able to show that there is a law for the average American citizen working day in and day out to pay an income tax.
The definition of income in the Constitution was given in the Eisner versus Macomber case, and it turns on gains or profits that are made from some activity.
Doyle versus Mitchell, 247 U.S. 179, 1918. Here's what he said. The idea of gain or increase arising from corporate activities. In other words, it doesn't mean wages, it doesn't mean dividends, it doesn't mean alimony. It means a gain or a profit arising from corporate activity.
These liens that are recorded against people by the government for tax liens are nothing more than allegations. They are non-substantive. They have never been determined by a neutral third party, such as a court, to have one shred of validity.
If you you ever get a notice of an audit or anything else, the first thing you should do is a Freedom of Information Act request for records that they're using to substantiate or justify the audit.
There is nothing in the Internal Revenue Code that creates any such thing as an income tax evasion or crime. There's nothing in the code that allows IRS agents to seize property. The government is involved in judicial blackmail. The government knows that if it legally seizes somebody's property, that person doesn't have the funds and he can't even get a lawyer who can help him.
I conducted investigations in the Title 18, the Criminal Code, the U.S. Criminal Code. And in there, the statutes and the regulations are very specific as to what's violating the statute. In the Internal Revenue Code, Title 26, there's nothing specific in there. I mean, even the FBI feared the IRS.
You have to understand that an agency which will unlawfully impose a tax that doesn't exist is not going to care. If we, the people, don't know what our rights are, they're not going to tell us.
If Americans just learned that the IRS was actually knowingly deceiving them, that would be enough for them to rise up and put a stop to it.
This small booklet includes the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence. This is a document that every citizen should read. It's a document which freed an entire nation. This is the Internal Revenue Code, and this document, and the unlawful application of this document by the Internal Revenue Service has enslaved the nation that this document attempted to free.
I was very impressed with the people in the tax honesty movement. They weren't kooks. They were highly intelligent, well-researched, and very genuine. I was wondering why I never heard about all these Supreme Court decisions in the media. So I really wanted the IRS's point of view, because to get the true story, it was imperative I hear both sides. I kept wishing Anthony Burke would call me back. He seemed like an honest man. I then proceeded to call my message machine.
Hi, this message is for Aaron Russo. This is Anthony Burke at the Internal Revenue Service. Let me suggest some people that you might want to think about talking to. One would be Don Alexander, who's a former commissioner who's here in town in Washington. Another would be Sheldon Cohen, who is both a former commissioner and former chief counsel. All those guys, I think, can answer your question about, where in the tax law it says that you have to pay taxes.
Wow, good news, I thought. So I called Sheldon Cohen because he used to be the IRS commissioner. He wrote the tax code, and he was also general counsel to the IRS. He is a true expert, and I couldn't find a better person to answer my questions. He graciously agreed to my interview. The reason I'm doing this documentary is because there are many people in America today who believe that there's no law that requires them to pay an income tax or file a 1040. And there are many people going to jail for it, fighting over it.
The Internal Revenue Code is authorized by the 16th Amendment.
I think it should be clarified. I think government should be transparent to the people. Why doesn't the IRS commissioner sit down with them and just explain it in clear English? Why?
I don't think they really care. I think they're just playing word games.
You don't think they're sincere people?
No, I don't think they're sincere people.
What does voluntary compliance mean? And why does the IRS code say it's voluntary to comply, not mandatory?
That's a word euphemism we use. We use voluntary compliance when we talk about traffic signals. Most people at 2 o'clock in the morning, do you stop at a red light?
Yeah.
Is there a cop there?
Well, sometimes I don't.
Well, I do. And most of us do. Most of us do.
Right.
But that's voluntary compliance.
That was a complete perversion of logic. Traffic laws state that it is mandatory to stop at a red light. The IRS code says it's voluntary to comply. Mandatory and voluntary are the complete opposite of each other. Yet he wants us to believe that they mean the same thing. So can the government criminally prosecute somebody of information put on their 1040?
Yes.
Right, so doesn't that violate the Fifth Amendment?
No.
But the Fifth Amendment says I don't have to do anything that incriminates myself.
Well, it doesn't incriminate you to put your income down.
But you said before I could be put in jail for it. The commissioner wants us to believe that although the IRS demands that you fill out the 1040 and you can go to jail for it, that they are not violating your Fifth Amendment rights of self-incrimination. That is absurd. Isn't it true that the word income is not defined anywhere in the Internal Revenue Code?
The law says that the government has a right to tax income from any source derived.
So, but the word income is not defined in the code. It just says income without a definition of what income is.
That's right.
Correct?
Yeah.
But there are many different kinds of taxes. Well, how can an American citizen know what income is if the code doesn't define it? If they're paying an income tax...
Because the courts have all defined it.
Do you remember what constitutional attorney Edwin Vieira said?
The definition of income in the Constitution was given in the Eisner versus Macomber case, and it turns on gains or profits that are made from some activity.
So the Supreme Court has ruled income is not wages, it's not labor, it's gain from corporate activity. I believe that a man's labor is his private property.
That's your view, but it's not the law.
The Supreme Court's even said your labor is your private property. When I go to work for somebody, it's a trade. It's an even exchange. I do some work, you give me some money.
In 1916, we had the Bruce-Shaber case and the Stanton case. And the Bruce-Shaber case and the Stanton case said that the 16th Amendment gave the government no new taxing power.
I'm not going to argue the niceties of that with you.
And it came up again in a case called Peck versus Lowe, where the Supreme Court said the 16th Amendment did not extend Congress's taxing power to any new or accepted subjects. In other words, if you weren't taxable before the 16th, you weren't taxable after the 16th.
Today I interviewed a juror, okay, who sat on a case, and they found the person not guilty for lack of filing, okay? And I asked her why they found him not guilty. And she said because the IRS couldn't show us the law that made him liable to file a 1040.
All they need to do, if there is a law, is to show us the law, which, of course, they never did.
And the reason they didn't do it was why?
Because there is no law.
Title 26 requires you to file a return.
But doesn't Title 26 have to be in compliance with the Supreme Court decisions?
You're going to take a 1920 case and superimpose it on the whole Internal Revenue Code that was written after it? No, that's not.
I can't believe what I just heard. Rewind.
You're going to take a 1920 case and superimpose it on the whole Internal Revenue Code that was written after it? No, that's not.
Remember he said earlier the Internal Revenue Code was authorized by the 16th Amendment?
The Internal Revenue Code is authorized by the 16th Amendment.
Remember, the Supreme Court said the 16th Amendment did not give the government any new taxing power. These decisions have never been overturned. Let's listen further. Can the lower courts overrule the Supreme Court?
No.
How are they putting people in jail today for not paying a tax on their labor when the Supreme Court said they don't have to? Doesn't the IRS code have to be in compliance with the Supreme Court? That's my big question.
This is a waste of time.
Well,
because whatever I say, you're not going to believe.
He's right. I don't believe him. And neither should you. He wants us to believe we should obey the IRS code, which is being enforced in violation of the many Supreme Court decisions. If the Supreme Court made a decision...
Thank you, Aaron. I think we're finished.
I'm sorry, Mr. Cohen, you're doing that.
Well, I'm sorry that you constantly re-argue the point. You're liable because the law says that you're liable, and the courts say the law says you're liable, and that's why you're liable.
You see, he's talking about the lower courts, who are not in compliance with the Supreme Court, as they have to be. Doesn't the court have to be in compliance with the Supreme Court?
The Supreme Court has so held.
Where?
You caught me unprepared.
I'll come back.
Well, I don't want to do that.
But let me ask you a hypothetical question.
No. You're making silly arguments here.
Why is the Supreme Court decision a silly argument?
Well, because it's inapplicable.
That made my heart stop. He just said Supreme Court decisions do not apply to the IRS. That's the behavior you would expect from a totalitarian country, maybe China or Russia or Cuba. Not from America. They're just making up the law as they go along. Now I knew the tax honesty movement was right. The IRS thrives on intimidation and fear, not by law. It's no different than a criminal protection racket, using force to extract your money from you. Then the former IRS commissioner, now working at a prestigious Washington law firm, threatens me. Watch.
Aaron, you understand Yiddish, Cornish to helfen.
For those of you who don't understand Yiddish, that means nothing will help you. Now it all became clear. I understood why the IRS wouldn't go on camera and talk about where the law was. I understood why all the senators I called refused to be interviewed. There is no law. And now you know what our political leaders and the courts have known for decades and have tried to cover up. The United States Constitution strictly forbids a direct, unapportioned tax on the wages and salaries of American citizens. The United States Supreme Court has consistently ruled that the income tax is a tax on profits and gains, not on labor and wages. On behalf of the American people, I challenge the IRS to show me a statute that allows a direct, unapportioned tax on the wages and labor of the American people. And if I'm wrong, I will give my most humble apologies to the IRS. If the IRS is wrong, and there is no law, then every person who's been jailed should be let out of jail immediately, and any assets seized should be returned to their rightful owners. If this is a nation of laws and a free country, then the IRS should show the law to the American people.
Now, as you can hear, Israel, these are the loopholes and the trickery that these government officials uses on the people. And also they use fear. So they will have people in place to enforce that law. And if you don't comply, you will go to jail, right? I've known through my time, I've seen people, gone to jail of not paying, their income taxes, right? Now, Lauryn Hill, right? Wesley Snipes, you can do your research. And also John Gotti. Now, John Gotti was a mafia, right? And he was doing all kind of wickedness, right? And, Sammy the Bull was his right-hand man. He was a hitman, right? And Sammy the Bull ended up, what you'd say now, actually testified against John Gotti. And, still yet, all of that still wasn't enough. But how they really got John Gotti mainly was on tax evasion. Would you believe that? He did not go to jail for, racketeering or murder or, any other, wickedness, but on tax evasion, right? So that goes to show you the type of power that these government officials have and the loopholes they can use on you to use you as an example to others, right? And this is why we, right, have to make sure that even what I am saying, you go and verify it yourself, you go and check, because even some of these IRS agents who used to work for the government thought that that was the law. Now, even police in the system, or any other government officials or people that works for the government would assume that there is a law stating that you have to do this because this is why we're implementing this law, right? And even when the agent went and checked it for himself, he couldn't find it. There was no clear-cut statement stating that you should pay this or pay that, right? Now, I'm in the Caribbean, right? It's a little bit different compared to America. But these taxes that we're paying here are so high. It's probably this, I would think that close to the nearest highest taxes in the world, which is England, right? England has one of the highest, income tax, you know what I mean? And funny enough, I'm going to try to get some information on that as well, but because, I know a little bit about, how it works there, right? Some of these taxes go straight to the Queen. The Queen family does not work. How they generate their money, this is something facts. How they generate their money or their wealth is off of taxing the people. Would you believe that? Now, I've been there and heard of where, the tax was, what they get for revenue was like 40 something cents at the time. I'm not sure, something close to that, pence, I should say, 40 something pence, right? And over a period of time, it rose from that to 70 something pence, right? Now, that might not sound a lot, but when you're getting all that from millions of people, remember, if you're in London, London is like 20 million people alone, and that's a city, right? So you can do the math, right? If I take $1 from every account, from everybody that works per se in, let's say in here in the Caribbean, right? Let's say in Jamaica, right? And say the mass population is say 8 million, right? If I take let's say 5 million people have a bank account, then I take $1 from all of those people. You won't miss $1. But if I take $1 from 5 million people, that's $5 million, right? Simple math, nothing hard, nothing easy. And it becomes serious wealth. So you can just imagine now being in the so-called royal family, right? And you're constantly every year taking this type of money from everybody, what I mean? You become super wealthy and you've been doing it for years. You understand? Years. So these taxes that these people implement, right? They are truly wicked, right? And even here in the Caribbean, these taxes are so, all these government do is instead of trying to really fix the problem, they use tax as a way to try to solve it by raising the taxes. They don't really try to go there and do the work. Instead of planting that seed and then letting water in it and let it, germinate and grow, and then, getting that fruit after a period of time. No, they want it right now, so they tax you. They're going to tax the life out of you because all of this is even in the Bible. I mean, this is in the Bible. Nothing is new underneath the sun, Israel. This has been taking place from the days of Christ. Remember, Matthew was a tax collector and Matthew was a disciple, right? And we're going to get into that when we go into the scriptures. As you can see here, this is the Statue of Liberty. And you can see, if you count those, what you call horns around the Statue of Liberty, that's the 7 horns. And the Bible speaks of that. The harlot, speaks of it in the Bible. But I'm just dropping that right there so you can do your own research and go into that, right? And tells you about Babylon, right? All right. So with that said, I'm going to continue a little bit more into this video. And the last video, I didn't leave the description and I apologize for that. So I will do that this time around for both of them. And you can go back and, go into these videos, right? So I'm going to continue a bit and then go into the scriptures.
I felt an overwhelming need to understand why juries were finding innocent people guilty of not filing a tax return when there was no law requiring them to do so. So I went to talk to Marcy Brooks, a juror who used her common sense and did not allow the judge to railroad the jury into a guilty verdict.
He was being tried for 4 counts of not filing his income tax.
Okay.
And our question was, well, what is to decide? Either he did or he didn't. It never occurred to us that he might actually be innocent while at the same time not filing. In the federal government, it is not a felony not to file taxes. Finally, they said, okay, if we're going to get this guy, we're going to have to put it in the state. They called up the IRS agent, Agent Craner.
Craner? Yeah, Robert Craner. Mm-hmm. This is Ken Doherty, who's also an investigator with the Illinois Department of Revenue.
This is a request for a copy of the delegation and authority order.
Right, and I talked to my boss about that, and he said that my badge is that.
Badge is the authority. I thought it had to be in writing.
The last question that the defense asked him was, did you write any of this down? And Agent Craner looked right at him and right at us, and he said, I never wrote anything down. And yet when we saw the video, there he was, writing notes, you know. And so I'm thinking, okay, at this point, the judge is supposed to say, Agent Craner, it is clear that you have committed perjury. It wasn't even noticed. It finally came to the climax. Mr. Harrell looked right at the prosecutor and he said, I will tell you the same thing I have told over and over again to government officials. You show me the law that requires me to file a tax return and I'll be glad to do it.
And again, I asked, under what is the requirement that you claim and are required to do these things? And the requirement under the regulations is what section? My question to you is, what particular act are we discussing here when I am liable to do these things if you claim I'm liable to do them?
Your exact question would be again? Okay, what is the section that what? But I guess I'm still not understanding your question, Mr. Harrell.
Well, you must be familiar with what that you have the police powers to enforce.
The prosecutor absolutely ignored him. And he started slandering Mr. Harrell. Just started attacking his character.
They're calling us tax cheats, they're calling us fanatics, they're calling us weirdos. I don't care what you call me, but I have one question. Where is the law? Show me the law.
They can't let this turn into a rational debate, because if they do, they lose it. So they have to insult people and say it's frivolous.
We felt like that there was an overall arrogance and that they were railroading Mr. Harrell and wanting us to participate. Judge Coogan, he looked right at us and he said, I will instruct the jury according to the law. We were sent to deliberation. The judge promised us that he would give us the law. And we looked and we looked and it was not there. We wrote a note to the judge asking for a copy of the law. 10 minutes later, we get a note back. You have everything you need, but there was no law. And he had promised us. At that point, I felt betrayed. I felt like this man promised us the law, and that's what this whole thing is about, the law. We request it, and he still denies us the law.
And the reason they didn't do it was why?
Because there is no law. Remember, we're talking about the Illinois state law here, okay, which is a law in Illinois. So we got out that law, and we read it several times, and I said, okay, wait, you know, because they kept saying, but this is a law in Illinois. And I said, look at the beginning of it. It says, anyone required to file a federal income tax return is required to file an Illinois tax return. I said, if it is true that he's not required to file a federal return, then that nullifies the Illinois law. Two people, they kept saying, but he's going to get by with it. And I said, what is he getting by with but his rights? If there is no law, he's not breaking a law. He's just standing on his rights. are we going to deny him that? That's when this one juror sat back and kind of rolled his eyes and he said, "You mean we don't have to pay taxes?" All of a sudden we realized that this trial was much bigger, and the ramifications of this trial were going to be so broad if it actually got out. I mean, it's like we had just discovered this great government secret. And so when we came out for the delivering of the verdict, the judge was, I'm sure, even at this point, I'm sure he still thought we would give a guilty verdict. And the reason I say that is because of the look on his face when the first not guilty was read. His face just turned white. I mean, it's like, I don't believe this. The second time, you could hear people out in the audience, just in the courtroom, just going, wow, and the judge is just getting red in the face. I mean, he was just livid. And the judge got up and left. I sat there and I thought, this truly is a victory for the people. And I have never felt more patriotic. And I knew that we had done the right thing. I looked at that man, Mr. Harrell, and I thought, the system might not work all the time, but this time, for that man, it did.
All right, Israel. So there we go, right? So we do have things that are discrepancies within the governmental system, and this is worldwide. This is everybody pays tax. You know what I mean? The only people that in the world that doesn't pay tax is the Queen, the royal family, right? And it goes the reverse. They don't pay tax, but you do pay tax, they get money from that. It's crazy, right? It's utterly absurd, but this is part of these wicked, systematical systems that they have us under. And it's slavery. You might not know it, but you are in slavery, right? As long as you're paying taxes, you are basically, it's like the mafia. The mafia have, like, per se, there is a strip, business strip, right? And they come to every business owner. I mean, you probably go a lot of places and this happens, where they pay protection fee or whatever fee they want to claim it to be, right? And they come to you and tell you, like, listen, you have to pay this amount, right? And if you pay this amount, you have no problem. Nobody can come trouble your business, yada, 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 right? So if you don't pay, though, it might not go well with you, because, they might come and, do all kind of wickedness to you, right? So in the reverse now, it's the same with the government, right? You don't pay your taxes, you will be getting in serious trouble. But here in the islands, though, right, slightly a little bit different. It's not that as serious as some of these first world countries, right? It is to an extent, but not as, so decisive. Where here, a lot of people, rich people, I should say, they go under the table to avoid paying taxes, right? Even here, we pay taxes all the time for everything, and yet you put in a tax return, you get back nothing. At least, in some of these first world countries, which, you can go there and you can, when at the end of the year, you can file back for some of that money that you have been paying. You get back a little something, which is peanuts, really. And, there is something that you can show. But in the islands, it's totally different. None of that. You don't, few people. And if you do get back anything, I mean, God bless you. You know what I mean? So all of this is wickedness and corruption. So let's get into it now, Israel. We're in 2 Timothy chapter 3, right? Verse 13 to 14. And it reads, "But evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived, right? But continue thou in the things which thou hast learned and hast been assured of, knowing of whom thou hast learned them, right? So, evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. Because even though they're deceiving all these people, them themselves are being deceived by who? These evil spirit fallen angels, because they're giving themselves over to what? The things of these world, money, power, control. And what it is to gain the world and lose your soul, right? So let's go to Acts 20 now, all right? And verse 29. And it reads, For I know this, that after my departing shall grievous wolves enter in among you, not sparing the flock. Right, Israel? So you have people coming in, what? As wolves among the people and sparing them not, right? Dealing with them treacherously, right? Doing all sorts of wickedness, from taxing you to nothing, to, giving you things that you don't want to impose on you, from medical to all type of things, you know what I mean? They put things into the food because the same people that control medical, the central medical, dealings, they also deal with food, right? So it's the same thing, you know what I mean? And it goes straight down the line. You are dealing with so much things that if you're not, this is what I'm saying, if you're not centered in Christ, you will be swept away in that water, that great flood, right? And left with nothing. Now, with that said, let's quickly go to something we're going to deal with taxes, because even the Bible speaks about it, right? So let's clear that up right now. So let's go to Matthew 17, all right, and 24, all right? So let's do it, Israel, all right? Matthew 20, 17, and 4. So let's actually now highlight that, all right? Let's go down to 27, all right? All right? Okay, so now this is Christ speaking, right? And they were asking him questions, right? And this is what transpired, right? So he talks about taxes. So here in the scriptures, it says paying tribute. Tribute is taxes, right? In those days, right? And it reads, and when they were come to Capernaum, they that received tribute money and came to Peter and said, doeth not your master pay tribute? He said, yes. And when he was come into the house, Christ prevented him, saying, what thinkest thou, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth take customs or tribute? Of their own children or of strangers? Peter said unto him, O strangers. And Christ said unto him, then are the children free? Notwithstanding, lest we should offend them, go thou to the sea, and cast an hook, and take up the fish that first cometh up. And when thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money, that take and give unto them for me and thee. Right? And that was so clever right there, what Christ said. You see that? He said, let's not offend them, right? So go to the sea, cast an hook, and take up a fish that first cometh up, and when thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. That take and give unto them for me and thee, right? So what Christ is trying to really show you here, right? Can you go to the sea, and when you go to the sea and you catch a fish and it comes up, would you find money inside of it to go and to go buy something, go, you know what I mean? So what he was trying to show them here, that how is it that you can say that you're paying tribute to something which really and truly you're not supposed to be doing that, right? Because the Most High had made the earth free. See, it says here, Peter said unto him, strangers of strangers, because Christ asked him before, if you who pay tribute, right? And he said, and when he was come into the house of Christ, prevented him, saying, what thinkest thou, Simon, of whom thou do thinketh, of whom do the kings of the earth customs or tribute, of their own children or of strangers, right? He's asking a question. He was saying to him, the customs that these kings of this earth have, right? Is the tribute to tribute to tax their own children or to tax strangers? So Peter answered unto him and said, of strangers. And Christ said unto him, then are the children free? You see the point right there? So if you're going to tax strangers, then the children are free. How is it that you're going to tax strangers and not tax, your children? If you're taxing me, you should tax everybody. So you're so clever. Christ is working here. You know what I mean? Notwithstanding that, lest we should offend them. Christ is saying, being, I think right here, what I mean, he's being ironic, right? And say, okay, if that's the case, lest we offend them, go to the sea and cast and hook and take up the fish that first cometh up. And when thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. That take and give unto them for me and thee. You understand? So these things, Israel, that these guys, implement and they put on the people are just pure wickedness, right? Pure wickedness, so that they can, in length, do wickedness unto the children of the Most High, right? So we must learn these things, Israel, that there is nothing new underneath the sun, and not only that, right? Even Christ had Matthew, which was a disciple, right? And he was a tax collector, right? And even when now he got into the word that Christ had to give, that God had to give him and teach him, right? He realized that even what he was doing was wrong, right? The Most High gave us life. He didn't tax us for it. Look at that simple analogy. When Christ himself was healing anybody, did he tax them? Did he say you have to pay a tribute? You have to give him a little money for these healings, right? When you do something good for somebody, do you come back to them and say, hey, I did something good for you, I need to tax you for that, right? When your mother and your parents that, birthed you and gave you life, right? Did they come back afterwards and say, you know what, we did a lot for you, we sent you to school, we fed you, we had to, do everything for you. Now we want, some tax back for all of that we did, right? No. So why are we being taxed? They're saying it's for the purpose of fixing roads and all this, all right? And that's okay. That's cool. But behind all of that, it was a more sinister thing. It was for them eventually to enslave people without them knowing it, by you paying them these money, and it goes to the coffers of these bankers. Because these bankers are of a small, section of people, right? And if you didn't know, most of your high-ranking bankers are Jewish people, right? And these Jewish people are from the descendants of Edom and also slash Amalek, which the Bible speaks about, right? One of these days, I'm going to definitely get into that and give you more information where that is concerned, because that information there is very, very critical. Because with Edom ruling the earth as they are now, right, which the scriptures talks about, right, but that kingdom will come to an end, right, and the new kingdom of Christ will emerge. This is why certain things have to come into play first, which is, these chips that you see they're coming with soon, the RID chips, which is the Pentagon. You can go check out one of my videos. They have actually created something like that. They can detect COVID-19. And then from there, with Elon Musk and all of that, which I did a video on that, dealing with, merging humans with AI, and that's the next level. So there is levels to these things, Israel. They're going to keep coming with more grievous and wicked implementing of laws that they want, so they can control the masses, basically to have you as slaves, you know what I mean? Enslaving the whole world, not just the children of Israel, but the whole world this time. Because they realize that the children of Israel are, basically waking up, and they're not going for no more lies. All right. So with that, Israel, I'm going to say all praises unto the Most High, giving thanks unto thee, Father, for thou art merciful and kind to thy servant and to thy people, and double honors unto our King and our Savior, Yeshua Christ, who laid down his life for his people. Until I see you again, Israel, shalom, shalom, one love.